Hello everyone and welcome back. In the previous video we flattened the scales as the last clip of that video. In this video we're attaching them together using an old carpenter's trick or woodworking trick to keep them parallel and in the same shape, since we're going to be mirroring what we're doing on either side. When it comes to super glue, a little dab will do ya. Now it's time to bring in the heat by lighting the forge. As you can tell, lighting the forge is generally a surprising proposition. The first of the two knives is now in to heat treat. These knives are made out of 1095 high carbon steel. It turns non-magnetic at around 1450 degrees, and at that point I know as long as I let it sit for a little bit longer, it'll be ready to heat treat and, ready to quench and get into the level of hardness I need it to do. And here we go. The bucket is off camera, but you can kind of hear it in the lower volume there where it's starting to steam. And of course I'm doing the same check of the second knife to make sure it's gone non-magnetic. Give it a few seconds more and then quench. Quench means cooling rapidly in water. In this particular case, depending on the type of metal, will determine the medium in which you quench your metal. And here are the two knives after quenching. This set of files is a very special set. It tests the hardness of the metal on the Rockwell hardness scale. I'll show you in just a moment the level at which this has been hardened. And this is at least a 65 on the Rockwell hardness scale. According to the test, what will happen is the file, when it skates across the metal, means that the file is not hard enough to put a scratch into it, so these particular files go to different hardnesses, and the higher hardness will allow me to put in a scratch, which will determine the level at which it is on the scale. And now, of course, the bevels. At this point, what I'm doing with the bevel is I'm actually putting in the apex of the knife to put in the edge. You'll see me quench it in water in just a moment. This is, of course, to keep it cooler while I'm putting in the last of the bevel. You don't want to ruin the heat treat by overheating the knife. For these knives, I took the bevel edge to a total of 400 grit. And what I'm doing here is I'm stropping the blade and removing the burr that is created during the sharpening process. And as you can see, they're shaving sharp. And now for the paper test, which of course shows that the burr has been removed and basically that the knife is sharp. Now we're taping up the edges to make sure that I don't accidentally scratch the knife edge or the blade itself while I'm working on the handle material. Now I'm drilling the holes using the knife handle as the guide to put holes into the handle scales so that they are ready for shaping. And now the shaping of the scales themselves so that they are ready to go on the knife. As you can see, Padauk is extremely messy. Don't know if you caught that, but the 40 grit belt just snapped on me. That was my last 40 grit belt. So I moved up to a 60 grit belt. As I'm still working, obviously I wasn't hurt. It was just more of a surprise that it happened than anything else. And it went flying over my left shoulder. So, all good. It's still carrying on. Right now you can really see the sawdust build up on the work table of the belt grinder, as well as the sawdust across the entire workbench itself. So it's covering everything, including me. So in true YouTuber fashion, I forgot to record the glue up process. You've seen it in another video I've done. So it's messy, it's nasty, it gets everywhere. But I got it put together, and I've peened the pins so that there's a mechanical connection holding on the handle scales, as well as the epoxy creating a water barrier between the metal and the wood itself. Again, I'm being careful on grinding down the pins themselves, as well as how close I get to the wood, to the metal of the handle. I don't want to overheat any of the metal because that will ruin the epoxy curing, the barrier it creates for moisture protection. But stay tuned, you will see an entire mess from just this Paduk. You can kind of see it in this clip how my hands are still purple from earlier. And thankfully I'm on vacation while I'm working on these things. So my hands get even more purple. But no one at work will actually see that because it's worn off. The reason why your hands turn purple from Paduk is the sawdust, the chlorophyll in sawdust is actually purple. When it dries, it turns into a red looking color. But when your sweat interacts with it, it becomes a nice, deep, rich, very pretty purple. I'm now hand sanding and shaping the handles, checking for hot spots in my hand, as well as making sure it feels nice, that the grain is nice and smooth, going all the way up to 400 grit with my sandpapers, making sure every scratch pattern that is there from the previous grit is gone, and taking extra care for some of those extra difficult spots to sand. And we're now at the end of the process where I am treating the handle with boiled linseed oil. And I'll show you the comparison between the two knives, one untreated and the other treated. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment, especially if you watched all three videos, about your thoughts on the process. And like and subscribe. Thank you again.